Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm glad to see you on this lovely day, a nice fall day that we have. As Nicole is preparing the PDF, PowerPoint, I just having you think about a few things. How about how many of you have adult learners in your classes? This is one of the things and why I am very interested in this because for a lot of people that go back to school, they do have challenges. My whole dissertation research for my PhD was looking at the challenges specifically for mature women, but at the same time, I was able to accommodate all mature students. So the title is okay, so the title of my webinar and the title of my dissertation was The Challenges and Barriers Mature Students Face When Returning to Higher Education. One of the things we have to think about is who are these students? And at the same time, what type of challenges and barriers do they have to face? Nicole, if you don't mind just changing the slide. Okay, my main research question was how do situational, dispositional, and institutional barriers impede non-traditional mature students return to higher education? When I was doing a lot of my work on adult learners and myself being an adult learner, a lot of things came across my plate. The other things I had to think about was the sub-questions were how do situational and personal barriers affect domestic relationships and family dynamics? How do mature students perceive themselves compared to their peers? And do institutions of higher learning provide a welcoming community culture for mature students? So
Sorry,
yes?
Please, would you please speak a little bit slower, please, because of the interpretation in French.
Okay,
and a little bit loud, un peu plus fort aussi.
Okay, perfect. All right. So if we go back, I'm looking at three different aspects. So I would like you to think about if you have mature students in your class, what is the situation? Are they going back to school to get better career opportunities? Are they going back to school so that they can, have lifelong learning? Well, what are some of the barriers about that? Most of the time for mature students, it could be their family, their children, etc. And we're going to cover that. So all of a sudden, you're a mature student, you walk in the classroom, you haven't been in the classroom for 30 years, and at the same time, you see all these young traditional students. How do you feel? And how do they feel about you? And do the institutions, the CEGEPs, the universities, do they embrace you? Do they tell you welcome? This is something that I looked at and I'd like to share it with you. The reason I did this is because I'm at Collège La Salle and my student base is between 18 to 25, young adults coming back to school. And this was one of my concerns when we had adults walking into the classroom. Okay, so my question, my problem statement was, despite the rapid increase in mature students returning to higher education, the conflict.
Would you please speak slower, please?
Okay.
Okay.
So what we're going to look at today is despite the rapid increase in mature students returning to higher education, the conflicting roles and lots of responsibilities mature students have, and the academic inequality that often gives them obstacles. So let's think about this. All right, I see something in the chat. That's from Tasha. So yes, I'm looking at that because you're asking me here. Does it adapt to students? I believe, right? So I'm just looking at here. Règlement des études, pas du tout adapté aux adultes. Exactly, and we're going to cover that in this webinar today. So if you don't mind to change, Nicole.
Yeah.
Okay. The purpose of this study was to increase the awareness of the experiences of non-traditional mature students and about the journeys they go through before they decide to go to school. One of the things, maybe people like this too, when they tell you, I'm going to go back to school, I want to finish my education, and people look at them and say, why are you going to do that? You're too old to go back to school. You're not going to fit in, you don't have time. Many reasons, right? I did this type of research because I wanted to know that what happens with them when they do return to school, and to understand the challenges and barriers mature students face, and the meaning of inner strength, determination, and perseverance to succeed. If you are a teacher and you have adult learners in your classroom, they probably work harder. They're probably on time. I know we've done a lot of research, we've done a lot of webinars, we've done a lot of conferences where we're told this is what you should do when you have an adult learner. But my curiosity is, who is this adult learner? And this is what we're going to look at today. Why did I do this type of research? Because we have more and more adult learners coming back to school, and specifically after COVID, a lot of people were, informally teaching themselves online, and then they came back to formal education. And this is something that we have to take a look at. And we as teachers, we as administrators, the whole community has to think about what other roles do they have besides just being students. And this has a lot of impact on their, success. Nicole, s'il vous plaît, if you don't mind changing, thank you. Just to give you a quick definition of what's a situational barrier, it's family, primary caregiving, childcare, spousal approval or disapproval can facilitate or impede that person going back to school. Time management, right? Obligations, the most challenging barrier to overcome are situational barriers. If you do have adult learners and you're teaching them or you're facilitating them, I'm sure the biggest thing they have is, who's going to take care of my children? Are they okay? And that's always on the back of their head. So this is something we have to think about. These challenges and barriers that they bring to the classroom with them, and how can we accommodate and make their lives better so that they can succeed? The dispositional one, it's a lack of confidence in their academic abilities, lack of validity of their prior educational skills, and of course, ageist attitudes. For those of you that are teachers, I don't know about you, but my students think anybody over 30 years old is old. So imagine someone coming in that's in their 40s or 50s. What do the other students think about them? And a lot of them don't believe that they should be there. So, okay, it's for you, it's not the family. Okay. So if we think about that, if for your students, are they looking at this positional? They don't lack, they're not confident in the classroom? Or could it be the institutions themselves, the CEGEPs, the universities, mature students and classroom experiences in higher education? A lack of academic support, often from faculty members, and the invisibility and outgroup status of traditional students. You have to think a lot of these adults are coming probably from work, all right? They're coming from work, they're coming from home. They're not at the university or CEGEP all day. It's very hard for them to work in groups. So these are some of the things that my research showed when I did interviews on the mature students that were participating in my dissertation. Okay, Nicole, you don't mind? All right, here again, the results from my dissertation showed of the three, the situational, the dispositional, and the institutional, the one that was the hardest for them, to be honest, was the institutions. When the participants decided to return to higher education, they did not realize the setbacks that they would encounter. For many participants, the biases and marginalization they experienced from admissions offices, faculty members, and younger traditional students meant that the experience of returning to school was not what they thought it would be. When we talk about admissions, they need to get their paperwork, they need to get birth certificates, they need to get transcripts, not as easy, right? So this is something that they have to think about. Do they have access to grants? Because a lot of them are part-time students, right? And yes, the finances is a very big one, because especially if we go back to our situational barriers like family, children, I remember having a student and she said to me, well, I can't buy the book because right now I have to buy my kid's snowsuit. Something to think about, right? So these are some of the things we have to think about. The reason I did this, to be honest, is that We as teachers, sorry about that. We as teachers, we see the students, excuse me, somebody's trying to click me here. This is Teams. I'm just going to close it from my college if you don't mind. Here. Okay. Whoops. Okay. So I'm just going to I'm sorry about this. It's a very busy time at my school right now. I'm sure all of you are going through the same thing. So when we think about, and like FL said with the financing, the lack of equity, being blocked from funding because of your student profile. You're part-time. Oh, you work, you have income, right? Also, a lack of flexibility on the part of faculty members. You know, office hours. A lot of the traditional students can go to the office of the professor, go to the office of the teacher, and say, okay, can we sit down for half an hour and you can go over what we looked at last week? But what about an adult learner who's at work or can only see the teacher after 6 o'clock? Well, there's nobody there at 6 o'clock, right? Unless it's the person doing the course. How about if you want to speak to a pedagogical consultant or someone that you just want to have some information? Well, there's nobody there at that time either, right? So one of the things that I have here is that the participants stressed that the subtle nature of educators and younger students' non-acceptance was an unwritten rule of how things work. Since many of the participants were eager to learn and complete their degrees, the existing institutional culture was unacceptable and discriminatory. We have to think about that too. Yes, I'm sure in the institutions that you are, go at 2 o'clock if you're a student, you'll find someone to talk to. You'll find someone to help you with financial issues. But after 6 o'clock, it doesn't exist. So again, more barriers by the institutions. Next, Nicole, s'il vous plaît. Okay. One of the things when we go back to our institutional barriers, and is I was looking for which part will not let you go back to school, or which part of the three barriers would you take into consideration to quit? I don't know about you with your adult learners, but I teach in the fashion marketing and fashion design program. And there's a lot of students that are mature that, especially in design, that say, I can't do this. I don't have the time. I can't, I, I don't have the friends. I don't have the teachers that can help me. And they quit. It's a very hands-on program. And the same goes with marketing. A lot of the students come in and they have no prior knowledge. They decided to do this because maybe they're working retail and they want to be a manager or work at the head office. So there's a lot of different aspects that we have to think about. When we think about the supervisors, institutions of higher learning often emphasize how education changed people's lives, right? Lots of, especially when they have open houses, oh, it's going to change your life, you're going to feel reflection, you're going to transform. But is it true, right, for the students? Although many institutions promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, the participants do not believe that the institutions accept and value mature students. One of the things about mature students, and I know this as being a mature student doing their PhD, is that she's not going to make it. She's old. She's got a full-time job. Why would she want that degree? She's never going to use it. Yeah, but perhaps maybe ask them why they're doing this. Many of the participants believe that the most negative experiences were from their professors, specifically their supervisors. In the university, when you're being, if we're doing a master's or a PhD, you have a supervisor. But sometimes the supervisor doesn't have time for you. And adult learners are not going to be causing them any issues. So they just do what they have to do. And that's what we have to do. And nobody can say anything. And they usually, decide to take a sabbatical, or they decide to, I'm going to take a year off. And that's not good, because all those other barriers are waiting for you, especially those at home, right? Another thing, a lot of the participants that were in my research said a sense of isolation and abandonment. The participants who had past experience with dismissive supervisors reported that they quickly decided to change supervisor to eliminate the risk of wasting time and energy. So they decided to work alone. So I'm not too sure about your CJEPs, but we have a lot of group projects, right? I'm sure Group projects, group projects, group projects. But when you're an adult learner, it's very hard to find yourself people that want to put you in the group with them. And also lack of awareness. The participants felt that taking on one more stress factor, such as the supervisor's lack of awareness of their specific needs and challenges, would not be part of their return to higher learning, and that they had to endure problematic supervisors and younger students. For many of them, they discussed the biases that they had to face. You have to realize that if we look at some of the adult learners we might have in our classrooms, what's their background, right? Is their background that they want to get another degree? Is their background that they're coming from another country? So who is this person? And the reason I did this webinar today is we have a lot more adults coming into our class, and we have to think, what's their background? Where are they coming from? What have they learned? What do I have to make them unlearn and relearn? So these are some of the things that I think about when we have adult learners coming into our class. For the research, Julie, for the research, it was done at an English university. Yeah, so this is where the research was done. And I had students that came from other Anglo universities and had the same issues. And some of them, that's why they transferred to the other universities because of the biases and unfairness. So thank you, Julie, for that question. Nicole, if you don't mind changing the slide there. Okay, so, but there was a positive to this, right? The participants also experienced positive results. They realized that education provides interchange as well as self-fulfillment, empowerment, and new identities. And below were some of the comments that I had here. So on reflection, overcame fear and took control of their lives, freedom instead of barriers. Well, that was very interesting, because freedom, what does that mean? That you're able to be an independent thinker, right? For them, they learned and they were very happy with going back to school. Retrospection, going back to higher education is not easy because the need for support is essential. And not only the institutions. I don't know about the students you have, and I keep asking you that. I know that the ones that I have, when I talk to them and ask them, like, where is the problem? And they say it's a lack of support. It's a lack of support from spouse. It's a lack of support from children. It's a lack of support of just everybody. So imagine you're going out, you've worked all day, or you've been, doing what you do. Imagine leaving that door and you already have the stress that you know that I can't leave. There's so many responsibilities here. It's very, very hard for people. Uh, yes, yes, Julie. Yes, it's true. You are absolutely right. Julie's question here is that the Anglophones are much more biased against, ageism. They have a stronger perspective of ageism, I think. And sometimes it's hard to for other students to really understand it. So put yourself in some of these students' situations. I had some situations of students that hadn't been back in school for 20 years. 20 years, that's a long time. So they didn't realize, like, what? They didn't even know, like, when we talk about discrimination or marginalization, a lot of them, what? Does that mean? You're going to face it and you're going to see what that means. We also have to think about, here was a really lovely one, uh, transformation, a life-changing experience, an unexpected event. Education allowed me to explore the unknown without even realizing it. And that was amazing. So this was, again, and I'll give you just to show you, to add on to Julie's her remarks here. She was a retired CSHEP teacher who returned to school because she wanted to. She wanted to finish her master's, and she said, wow, she didn't even realize what hit her, which was wonderful. And future goals, everybody unanimously said lifelong learning. So there's a lot that we can say about adult learners going back to school. And they can give us a lot too. They have a lot of stories. They have a lot of experiences that they bring to the classroom. I know that we've had, and I've done conferences too, that, okay, this is what you should do, this is what you should do. But before we say what should we do, we should also take a look at everybody's different in the classroom with their needs and their challenges and their expectations. So this is my first question when I ask my students, because I know they're going to come and say, can you put me in a group? Or what's the better one? Can I do this alone? I don't think you can do this alone because it needs 6 people in a group and you'll be working day and night, right? So I see a hand. I think, Nicole, we are going to put a question in the chat, right?
Bon, en principe, c'est dans l'espace Q et R, mais je ne crois pas qu'il y en ait des questions ouvertes là-dedans. Là, je vais arrêter le partage 2 secondes pour aller voir dans le chat s'il y a des questions qui ont été posées.
OK.
OK, les recherches, bon, oh, un instant. OK, bon, il y aurait peut-être que le son s'est corrigé, un instant. Les règlements, OK, c'est plus des commentaires qu'on voit, OK. Le personnel, oui, c'est ça, ce sont plus des... OK, il y a quelqu'un qui demande, est-ce que les recherches ont été faites dans des institutions anglophones ou francophones? Je crois que c'est anglophone que tu as dit, hein, Heather?
Yes, yes.
OK.
Oui.
OK. Plus de billets, bon, c'est ça. OK. Alors, ce sont des commentaires. Alors, on peut continuer. Je repars le partage. Sorry, everybody. Et voilà.
Okay, thank you. And you can, if you'd like to change the slide to the next one.
Yeah.
Okay.
OK.
Okay. I think we're going the other way, or maybe there was 2 slides. It would be after this one, lack of awareness.
Oups, on est rendu plus loin que ça, un instant.
Yeah. Yeah.
OK.
One more.
Okay.
All right. So I wanted to leave some time for us to have a discussion and some of the recommendations that were offered and based on the research. So, and if you have questions, please ask, or comments. It's really interesting to see that there are others within you here that are facing some of these students that come in, and I see, there's a lot of stuff that, yes, you're right. I see, like FL also said that sometimes it's not the family, but it's more the institution. So that again reinforces the research that was done here. So so let me tell you a little bit my discussions and my recommendations. When reviewing the study's findings on situational, dispositional, institutional, the results were found to support both past and most recent literature on this. These findings included desire to change career path. So we call that the encore career. I'm sure a lot of the mature students that come into your classes, it's to find a better job. Majority is to go back to school, get refreshed, so they can find better jobs, or just, jobs in general, career changes. A lot of people want career changes. They're not happy with what they do. And again, marketable reasons, to be more competitive, to be more marketable, because there's a lot of pressure on, I'm going to say, older individuals when they want to go back for work. It seems like with high technology and younger people and the turnover within these younger people, I think the experiences and the loyalty that mature students often bring to a workplace doesn't really have any validity anymore. So many of the participants felt that their past lives had held them back from attaining their goals and creating the necessary aspirations, right? Our return to education requires that they take responsibility for and ownership of their learning. And that's a lot of times they have a path that they want to do. They're going to do their homework, they're going to study, they're going to do everything, but you need a lot of sense of ownership and responsibility, thereby providing themselves with second chance to finish their studies and complete a degree. The second chances they hope for example, to complete degrees and improve their lifestyle, also generating an inner change in them. What I liked about doing this research was, for many of the people, specifically the women in this research, it was finding themselves, finding new identities, feeling empowered. Empowered is a very big word, and it depends on how you take it. But for me, empowered was like, let me be independent. Let me think about things. I'm proud that I learned something. So this is a lot of the answers that I received also. when we think about Freire, who was one of my favorite scholars when going through this work, stated emancipation through education is possible. It involves the active participation and critical forces of the oppressed themselves as education of equals based on active, dialogical, critical, and criticism stimulated methods. So again, there's so much literature out there on adult learners. And we have them coming into our class, and I don't, they it's so funny. They come and they tell you right away, I'm an adult learner. Okay. And I always say, and there's no difference in this class. I tell them when they're with me, there is no difference because we're all learners together. So again, this research was done to find out who are these adult learners, what are their expectations, and how can we help them. Nicole, if you don't mind, the next slide. Okay. So some of the policies that I know we're not too keen on a hybrid and stuff, but it works, right? Especially for those that are home, they've worked all day and they've got children at home and they can't leave them. So academic course scheduling through online and hybrid courses, flexible course schedules. This is something I don't know if the institutions would be ready for. Some of them do it, but having courses on the weekend, you know, flexible course schedules, not having to be there at night or in the day, forget it. If somebody's working, they are not able to leave the work to go to their class. Scholarships, grants, financial aid for mature students, and support system networks. When we talk about a culture of community, have other mature students be with them. Let them talk, because a lot of them, when we went back before to isolation, they feel they're all alone. Nobody understands what it is to be a mature student. So why don't we have some communities of the culture of community where we can be together, we can share how we feel. And this is something that I believe would be some kind of reinforcement for them, somewhere to go, someone to talk to, so they wouldn't feel this isolation. Because once isolation, thoughts of leaving come up quicker. Future research, I was thinking about more research should be done to establish why EDI policies, which institutions of higher learning promote and paint themselves as being open to all students and not implemented more robustly. One of the things, there's a lot of policies in school, but I think ageism, which is a discrimination, often gets overlooked. And these are some of the things that we need to look at. Like, I think, like Julie said, yes, the culture in the Anglophone community is very biased and is very discriminatory. So, these are things we have to think about when we have students in the classroom. Yes, we can talk about how to make them work in teams and how, they don't get along with students or they get along with students. So, but that's not it. We need to find out, what do they want? How do they feel? Because I think for all of us, our long-term goal is lifelong learning. So this is something that I want to implement. And I think with this research and with getting the message out to people, it could help us, create better atmospheres and community cultures for all of these adult learners. Okay, I think that's the last one for now. And there we go. So one of the things that, again, so I was thinking about this when I was making this slide, and I was thinking, okay, but for those people, that have the adult learners in their classrooms or want to learn. I saw some people here from continuing education. I think it's very important that we differentiate how they learn. So here's the adult learner, and we have the andragogy. This is the word that, because adults learn differently. We have to think about that too, because, we have the pedagogy, which is how students are, the younger ones till they become in high school, how they learn, teacher-centered, right? And that's what they want because that's how they're taught. But also, when we think about adult learners and we talk about teacher-centered, that's what they know. So when we try to flip it a little bit and say, okay, let's be student-centered, they feel very uncomfortable with that. Okay, I'm looking at what Faja said. So having the institutions pour les adultes, okay, your school, comme au troisième âge. Exactly. So that's exactly like what Fanja is putting in the chat. So again, it's very, very hard to connect the two. So if you have adult students in your classroom, we have to think about where do we start? So one of the things about adult students, they have to have a need to know. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this assignment? Why am I doing this experiment? So you need to tell them why they're doing. They come in there with a purpose. They have a need to be self-directed. So many of you, self-directed is something that you see perhaps in your students, but the older ones, they have to be in charge. So this is what I'm doing. Now that I know why I'm going to be doing this, why am I know I'm going to be doing this degree so that I can get a better job. But in order for me to get that better job, I need to have ownership and responsibility, and I can do it myself. But I need you there, teacher, professor, if I have a question. A lot of them bring experiences into the classroom. And I'm sure some of you, they say, oh, I didn't know what that's what I'm doing. I didn't know that what the word was. I have a lot of those type of students. It has a name to what you're doing. Oh, wow, I've been doing it forever, right? So they bring this experience with them into the classroom. And I'll give you an example of when you've got the younger, and maybe some of you have this example also. You bring the younger students with the mature students, and the mature students lifts their hand and says, oh, I know that. I've been doing it for 20 years and I've been doing it this way. The first thing you see when you observe the younger ones, eyes up and like, I'm bored. Well, you know something, you're going to listen. So this is something that they don't realize that bringing your experience has a lot of advantages, but it also has to be changed to the new direction that you're going to. Become ready to learn when there is a need to know. Why am I doing this? Oh, you're doing this because you want to get your degree. You're doing this for this reason or the other reason. Okay, now I'm ready to do what I have to do. They have a problem-centered orientation to learn, like problem solving. So they're good with critical thinking, but they love to have what's the problem and how do I fix it? Perhaps that's bringing their experiences in again, are strongly motivated by intrinsic motivators. So again, oh, I feel freedom. I feel good. I can reflect. It changed me. So what are their intrinsic motivators? A lot of them, for me, it's not money because that's an intrinsic motivator. But the ones that I've spoke with and that I still speak with today is that it's going to make me feel smarter. It's going to make me feel educated. These are some of the intrinsic motivators that they carry. Okay, and Nicole, I think, yeah, there are the references. So any questions or any suggestions you have for me in this research? What do you think? Anyone have anything that you want to um, add to this? Because to me, this was a collaborative webinar for all of us. And at the same time, your ideas are always an addition to all the research out there. So I think it's good if we can share some of the ideas. If you have adult learners or if you're an administrator and continuing education, it would be great to see and to hear what you have to say. So anybody want to add something or continue? It's up to you.
OK. Parfait, j'arrête le diaporama.
Oui, s'il vous plaît.
OK. Voilà. OK. Alors, merci beaucoup, Heather, pour cette présentation. Est-ce qu'il y a des gens qui ont des questions? Je vous demanderai de les écrire dans le module Q&R. Mais je vois qu'il y a beaucoup de... Moi, je n'ai rien vu, là, étant donné que j'ai été en mode partage. J'ai vu qu'il y avait quand même beaucoup de commentaires là, qui étaient laissés par les participants. Est-ce qu'il y en a qui auraient des questions à poser à Heather?
Peut-être je peux les demander des questions. C'est-tu correct, Nicole?
Oui, bien sûr.
OK. Pour moi, c'est pour savoir, avez-vous des apprenants adultes dans vos classes? Puis comment vous pouvez diriger les apprenants adultes avec les jeunes?
Les gens, si vous désirez, vous pouvez lever la main pour répondre à la question de Heather et on va pouvoir vous entendre. Je vais activer votre micro. Donc, tu peux peut-être reposer ta question, Heather.
Oui, je voulais savoir, c'est qui dans notre chat ici, ou les participants qui ont des apprenants adultes dans leur classe, puis comment est-ce que vous les mettez ensemble avec les jeunes dans la classe en même temps? Ça va-tu bien avec les jeunes puis les apprenants adultes?
Alors, il n'y a pas de gens qui lèvent la main. Moi, je peux dire, par exemple, qu'en tant qu'enseignante, j'ai déjà eu, je donnais le cours de psychologie de la sexualité, imagine, et j'avais des étudiants jeunes et des étudiants très adultes. Et donner un cours comme celui-là à deux groupes d'âge très différents, ce n'est pas évident. Je puis te le dire. Ah, il y a Jannick qui a levé la main un instant. Jannick, alors, participant, un instant. Jannick, un instant. Oui. Alors, je vais activer ton. Oui. Parfait, Jannick, votre micro est activé.
D'accord, je ne suis pas Jannick, je suis Martine Tremblay. J'ai dû partager la connexion parce que je n'avais pas
OK.
reçu la connexion. Donc, c'est Martine Tremblay, Cégep de Jonquière.
Oui, parfait.
Double, j'ai enseigné au régulier. Pour nos étudiants, on faisait des aménagements pour les étudiants adultes au régulier. Souvent, moi, j'avais une attention particulière à avoir été aussi étudiante adulte. J'étais un peu comme vous, j'étais très, très empathique à ce qu'ils vivaient. Pour le mélange avec les équipes, je les laissais prendre la décision mais ils voulaient pas nécessairement travailler seuls. Donc, je les laissais prendre la décision. Présentement, ce pourquoi je suis ici, c'est que, bon, on démarre une AEC, une attestation d'études collégiales dans un service scolaire et ce ne seront que des adultes. Donc, qui effectuent le retour aux études. Donc, c'était la raison de ma venue. Tu sais, je me dis, ben, mais je me rends compte que déjà, j'ai fait déjà beaucoup d'aménagements dans la façon d'envisager l'enseignement. Ce sera aussi une alternance travail-études. Donc, ce que vous avez dit, c'est exactement ce qu'on va faire. C'est qu'on va avoir des cours les soirs, les fins de semaine et adapter à la réalité de ces personnes-là. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup. C'est ça parce que vous faites un bon travail pour ça, parce que je pense que si les adultes dans votre AEC vont être ensemble, ils vont travailler ensemble, ils vont avoir leurs expériences ensemble, ça va vraiment bien travailler pour vous.
Oui, c'est génial. Je suis vraiment contente de ça. Ouais.
Oui, oui.
Merci, Martine. Il y a Fanja qui veut parler aussi. Alors, Fanja, je vais demander d'allumer votre micro. Parfait, c'est fait. OK.
Oui, oui, merci beaucoup. Bonjour. En fait, moi, j'aimerais, oui, c'est un peu comme la dame qui vient de dire. Là, mais pour elle, c'était AEC collégial. Et donc, c'est pour ça que j'ai écrit dans le chat que ce serait mieux qu'il y a aussi comme ça l'équivalence, mais à l'université. Mais là, on est un peu confuse, microprogramme, DESS, etc. Alors que nous avons déjà notre maîtrise. Si on souhaite continuer vers le doctorat, on peut continuer, mais des fois, ils nous disent il y a des scolarités préparatoires et puis comment un peu revenir sur un cours de mathématiques il y a 30 ans. Et puis, ça, c'était vraiment un vécu personnel, hein. J'ai réussi le cours, mais après, disons, après 3 sessions, et puis après, ils m'ont exclu du programme pour dire que je n'ai pas réussi le cours de mathématiques, mais alors que j'ai réussi les autres cours de 3e cycle. Vous avez un peu la charge mentale là-dessus. À cause d'un cours, je n'ai pas pu suivre le programme alors que j'ai réussi les autres cours. Et puis c'est pour ça que je dis que c'est pas du tout équitable. On ne peut pas revenir en collégial quand même, alors qu'on a déjà nos expériences, on a déjà nos connaissances, et même les cours qu'on a fait, c'est déjà des cours qu'on a déjà fait. On a eu les très bonnes moyennes, mais à cause d'un cours, juste d'un cours de scolarité préparatoire, et puis tout est foutu, désolé pour le terme, mais ça me... Ça me fatigue vraiment et puis ça épuise l'énergie, ça épuise le moral. Il y a beaucoup d'affectations. C'est pour ça que j'ai dit que le personnel n'est pas du tout, comment dirais-je, euh, c'est pas du tout équitable, c'est pas du tout équité, il n'y a pas d'inclusion, il n'y a pas... Et on dirait qu'ils prennent tout le monde dans un même panier, alors que ce tout le monde-là, chacun a son vécu que Madame l'enseignante chercheur là a bien dit. Vous avez bien compris parce que vous y étiez. Mais la plupart de ce personnel-là, peut-être que c'était juste baccalauréat et tout de suite avec son poste, mais qui ne comprennent rien du tout.
Merci, Fanja. Merci. Est-ce que c'est cette situation-là, tu l'as déjà rencontrée, Heather? Tu en as déjà entendu parler?
Oui, 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 c'est ça, parce que, étant donné avec vous, puis tout le monde, moi, quand j'étais faire mon doctorat, c'était plus sur le curriculum, comme on dit en anglais, plus le feedback, puis tout ça comme ça. Mais comme je vous dis, le premier cours qu'il faut prendre dans le doctorat, c'est Quantitative Statistics. Puis c'était de 6 heures à minuit, parce qu'on pouvait seulement s'en aller si on avait terminé notre travail. Je me rappelle quand c'était dans le break, j'étais dehors, on était 5 apprenants adultes, puis la balance c'était des jeunes. J'entends des étudiants qui disent, je vais le dire en anglais, it's their fault, those people, that we have to stay here till midnight. C'est ça quand j'ai décidé, on n'est pas those people. Puis je voulais savoir c'était quoi, peut-être qu'il y avait seulement moi qui était comme, tu sais, OK, moi je suis ici, j'ai travaillé toute la journée au cégep, au collège, puis je viens le soir, puis you're telling me that those people, c'est notre faute qu'il faut prendre le cours? Je pense que pas. Ouais. D'abord, moi aussi, comme on a vu avec Fanja, les institutions, eux autres, si c'était plus pour les jeunes, il faudra un pre-course ou un course pour eux autres. Mais des fois, c'est juste un cours. C'est tout le temps différent avec les apprenants adultes qu'avec les jeunes. D'abord, comme vous, Fanja, je ne sais pas, des fois, ils ne nous mettent pas tout dans la même all students. On est comme séparés. On est comme older. C'est ça, même avec on dit non-traditional puis traditional en anglais. C'est quoi la différence? On a en commun, on va être là parce qu'on veut être là. On veut être là parce qu'on veut faire quelque chose avec notre carrière, peut-être avec notre vie, on veut changer un petit peu. D'abord, pour moi, j'ai fait cette recherche pour du monde comme Fanja, pour du monde comme Martine, parce qu'on a retourné, puis c'était pas facile. Puis si je vous demande c'est qui ici qui était apprenant adulte, vous savez comment c'est dur de travailler et prof dans la journée, puis être étudiant ou étudiante le soir. C'est très dur avec les deux chapeaux aussi. Il faut qu'on fasse des changements avec tout ça.
Merci beaucoup, Heather, pour ce beau témoignage, cette belle présentation qui regorge de vérité de toutes sortes. En tant qu'ex-étudiante adulte aussi, j'étais très à l'écoute de ce que tu disais et ça a été vraiment très inspirant. S'il y a des gens qui désirent encore commenter, vous pouvez le faire. Autrement, ben, je pense est-ce qu'il y a d'autres choses que tu voudrais ajouter, Heather?
Pour moi, je pense, si on a des étudiants dans notre cours qui sont avec les jeunes, il faut faire une collaboration au lieu du conflit. Ça, c'est quelque chose que moi, j'ai appris à être prof dans le cours avec les deux. On essaie avec des techniques, des stratégies plus collaboratives. Puis, des fois, ça fonctionne, des fois, ça ne fonctionne pas. Mais aussi, pour nous autres, si vous pensez de retourner à l'école, faites-le, s'il vous plaît, parce que maintenant, moi, comme je dis, on a 50% qu'on veut le faire. Va faire l'application, puis commence là, parce que ça va vous changer. Il y a une transition, il y a beaucoup de recherches qui disent transformation, puis on change. D'abord, c'est très... Si vous pensez à ça, vous allez faire votre doctorat, qu'est-ce que vous voulez, il y a quelque chose d'autre, un changement de carrière, ça vous change. Et ça, c'est mon inspiration. Parce que moi, comme je vous dis, la journée que j'ai eu mon doctorat, ça ne m'a pas affecté. Juste quand tout le monde me dit, you're an inspiration. D'abord, j'ai dit, peut-être c'est ça pourquoi j'ai fait ça, pour inspirer les autres, retourner à l'école. Vous allez voir les bénéfices de tout ça. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Heather. Puis je me dis peut-être à une troisième prochaine fois. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Merci tout le monde. Et
Bye.
bye bye.